Chapter 3. How affliction lieth in order to instruction. I come now to the third thing propounded, namely, to inquire how affliction lies in order to instruction. What tendency chastisement has to promote the teachings of God in the soul. What use God makes of correction to this end. It is true there is a need of an arm of omnipotence to make chastisement to have a saving influence upon the heart, and so there doth also even in the word itself and divine ordinances. They do not save by an intrinsical virtue or power of their own, but there is a passive fitness in them to serve omnipotence for divine and saving ends. A fitness of instrumentality, as there is in a saw to cut, and in a wedge to cleave, and so forth. The instrument can do nothing alone, but there is a fitness in it to serve the hand of the workman. Thus it is in a proportion with affliction. It is true, there is not so immediate and direct a tendency in the rod as there is in the word, to teach and instruct the children of God. Yet there is in chastisement a subserviency to prepare the heart of man, and to put it into a better disposition to comply with divine teaching than naturally it is capable of. Christ works in the hot furnace. The most excellent vessels of honor are formed there. Manasseh, Paul, and the jailer were all chosen in this fire, as God saith, I have chosen thee in the furnace of affliction, Isaiah 48, verse 10. Grace works in a powerful, yet in a moral way. God speaks when we are most apt to hear, congruously, yet forcibly, by a fit accommodation of circumstances, which you may discover in these four particulars. Number 1. By correction, God takes down the pride of man's heart. There is not a greater obstruction to saving knowledge than pride and self-opinion, whereby man either thinks he knows enough, or that what God teaches is not worth learning. Therefore it is proclaimed before the word, hear and give ear, be not proud, for the Lord hath spoken, Jeremiah 13, verse 15. In divine matters, as well as human, only by pride cometh contention, Proverbs 13, verse 10. It is pride which raises objections against the word, and disputes the commands, when it should obey them. These proud men in Jeremiah, when they could elude the message of God by his prophet no longer, did at length stiffen into downright rebellion. First, they shift. Thou speakest falsely, Jeremiah 43, verse 2. And then they resolve. As for the word thou hast spoken to us in the name of the Lord, we will not hearken unto thee. Be it Baruch, or be it God, we will have none of it. But we will certainly do whatsoever goeth forth of our own mouth. Jeremiah 44, 16 through 17. Such a masterpiece of obduration is the heart of man, that it stands like a mountain before the word, and cannot be moved till God comes with his instruments of affliction, and digging down those mountains, casts them into a level, and then God may stand, as it were, upon even ground, and talk with man. This pride of heart speaks loudly in the wicked, and whispers too audibly even in the godly. It is a folly bound up even in the hearts of God's children, till the rod of correction drives it out. And then the poor bleeding wretch cries, Lord, what wilt thou have me to do? Acts 9, verse 6. Number 2. Affliction is God's forge, wherein he softens the iron heart. There is no dealing with the iron while it remains in its own native coldness and hardness. But put it into the fire, make it red hot there, and you may stamp upon it any figure or impression you please. God maketh my heart soft, Job 23, verse 16, saith Job. melted vessels that are impressive to any form. So it is with the heart of man. Naturally, it is colder and harder than the northern iron, and that native hardness is much increased by prosperity and the patience of God towards sinners. The iron sinew will rather break than bend. It is only the hot furnace that can make it pliable and impressive to God's counsels. Therefore God resolves on this course. I will melt them and try them, Jeremiah 9 verse 7. And sometimes God is forced to make the furnace 7 times hotter to work out that dross which renders men so unconformable to the ministry of the word. While God sends his prophets, rising up early and sending them, and yet they will not incline their ear, but harden their necks against divine instruction. Jeremiah 25 verse 4 and Jeremiah 17 verse 23. When the earthly heart of a man is so dried and hardened by a long sunshine of prosperity that the plow of the spiritual husbandman cannot enter, God softens it with showers of adversity, making it capable of the immortal seed, and blesses the springing thereof. The seed falls upon stony ground till God turn the stone into a heart of flesh. Number 3. By chastisement, man is made more attentive unto God. In prosperity, the world makes such a noise in a man's ears that God cannot be heard. He speaks indeed once and twice, again and again, very often, yet man perceiveth it not. Job 33 verse 14. He is so busy in the crowd of worldly affairs that God is not heeded. In the godly themselves there is much unsettledness and giddiness of mind. Our thoughts are naturally vain and scattered, the spirit slippery and inconsistent, which is a great impediment to our clear and full comprehensions of spiritual things. And therefore God deals with man as a father with his child playing in the marketplace, and will not hear or mind his father's call. He comes and takes him out of the noise of the tumult, carries him home, lays him upon his knee with the rod in his hand, and then the father can be heard. Well, so does God. I say with his children, he openeth their ears, Job 36 verse 10, which the world had stopped. And then instruction will enter. When Joab would not come to Absalom, he sets his field on fire, and thus, after neglects, God brings us to treat with him by affliction. God saith, as it were, Come, let us reason together, Isaiah 1 verse 18. And the soul echoes back again, Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth, 1 Samuel 3 verse 10. And when the soul is thus silent unto God, he comes and seals instruction by his Spirit. Number 4. And lastly, affliction is an eye salve, whereby God opens the eye of the soul to see the need and excellency of divine teaching, by the discovery of its own brutish ignorance of God and of his ways under all divine administrations. As Ephraim once bemoaned himself to the Lord, I have been as a bullock unaccustomed to the yoke. Jeremiah 31 verse 18. The prophet David will interpret it. So foolish was I, and ignorant, and like a beast before thee. Psalm 73 verse 22. By means of this discovery, God draws out the heart into humble and holy supplication for divine teaching. That which I see not, teach thou me, and if I have done iniquity, I will do no more. Job 34 verse 32. When or how cometh the sinner thus to put in for instruction? Why, says he, I have borne chastisement. That's verse 31a. Correction discovered the need of instruction. That which I see not, teach thou me. That's verse 32a. And thus Ephraim, Thou hast chastised me, and I was chastised. Jeremiah 31, verse 18a. But blows alone will not do it. Therefore it follows, turn thou me, and I shall be turned. That's verse 18b. Though chastisement alone could not turn Ephraim, yet it made him see an absolute necessity of divine power to his conversion. And when God hath brought the heart once into this frame, to see and be affected with this sense of its own ignorance and impotency, and to lie in the dust at God's feet, humbly importuning an effectual teaching from heaven, if God should withhold it, he would fail of not his promise only, but his own counsel and designs, in reference to which God cannot lie. Titus 1, verse 2. But when he hath prepared the heart to pray, he will cause his ear to hear. When God has engaged the heart in holy desires of saving instruction, it is not mercy only in God, but faithfulness, to satisfy the desire of his own creation. Good and upright is the Lord, and therefore he will teach sinners in the way. Psalm 25, verse 8. Thus much for the third particular thing propounded for the opening of the doctrine. I now come to the fourth and last.